Marjorie and I met about 6 months ago at the San Diego BoucherCon when we were fortuitously, and I think kind of serendipitously, yes, connected on the same panel. The panel had a very funny title. It was kind of like Hollywood people who also write stories. It was something like that.
It was actually writing for Hollywood.
Writing for Hollywood, but then it was like, but also stories. Like,
well, I had to call up our wonderful moderator, and I said, you know, I've worked in Hollywood and I write about Hollywood, but I've never written for Hollywood. So just to be clear, I'm the outlier here, but you all were very gracious and welcoming, and it couldn't have been nicer.
well, and we all had a different experience to share, and we all learned from one another. So I guess I thought, in retrospect, it was terrific casting. And within a month, Marjorie and I had lunch, and I decided she would be a wonderful speaker for Sisters in Crime because she has so much to share with you, not only about her acclaimed costume design background, but the success of her debut novel. So there'll be a lot to talk about. What I love is that Marjorie says she has been in the storytelling business, her professional storytelling business, her entire professional life. But it was from a particular angle, from a visual design angle. And you graduated from the University of Virginia.
Right.
Yes, in design, in theater actually, and then went on to the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City, where she got a degree, an AAS degree in fashion design, and began a career designing for theater and opera. So in a sense, that was part A of your first act, right?
True.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you traveled across the country, designing for other opera and theater companies, right? And then also at the New York City Opera at Lincoln Center, where one of her mentors was Beverly Sills, whom you may have heard of. Yes. And then part B of her first act, she moves to Los Angeles to break into the feature business. How did she do? Let's find out. She spent 27 years working as a key member of costume design teams for a string of successful movies, acclaimed critically and commercially, that you may have heard of. Shall we start with Forrest Gump? Apollo 13, A Bronx Tale, The Firm, Wag the Dog. Is that the Dustin Hoffman story you can tell? Yay, all right. The Aviator. And then Hairspray. What a variety, I love this. Angels and Demons, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, and, Marvel, X-Men Days of Future Past. And then she decided she wanted to use all of that behind-the-scenes Hollywood movie production experience to launch her second act. So her debut novel, Final Cut, set in a movie set in Malibu. It was debuted actually in June 2023, and it features film costumer Joey Jessup. I wonder who that was inspired by. And it has been chosen as the Amazon editor's pick in the best mystery, thriller, and suspense category. It was also selected by the Los Angeles Public Library blog as one of the favorite books of 2023. And Deadly Pleasures magazine recently named Final Cut as one of the, you guessed it, best cozy mysteries of 2023. Her second book, Starstruck, will come out not so long from now, May 7th, a month from today. Get ready for it. And Marjorie wanted me to mention that she is a proud member, of course, of Sisters of Crime and Mystery Writers of America. So welcome. Happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. That's so lovely.
So we talked about our aha moments, the bridge from the first act to the second act. You've heard a little bit about her first act, which was very long and successful, and now she's well into her act two. When did you have the aha moment? When you knew it was time to transfer your visual storytelling to prose? And also, I'm curious, we haven't talked about this. Did you always know that you wanted to write mysteries? Or was it just that you knew you wanted to write fiction?
It was at first that I knew I wanted to write fiction, and that's been since I was a child, when I read The Wind in the Willows for the first time, and I just loved the book so much that I decided to write my own fan fiction for Badger and Mole. So I've always wanted to be a writer, but it wasn't until I started working in film that I really became, I was a mystery fan. I read Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, and I always loved Sue Grafton, but I found that once I started in film, one of the best trick to unwind my brain from the workday was to read a great murder mystery at bedtime. And that really, that would take me away like nothing else, and I'd get lost in the puzzle, and then I could relax and go to sleep. So at that point, for 27 years almost, I read almost exclusively murder mystery fiction and became a super fan. And then when I decided, I guess about 10 years in, I started thinking about that, after I'd read several hundred, I thought, it would be fun to create, this puzzle for myself. But my aha moment really didn't come until I met my agent at CCW, Crime Writers.
CCWC.
Right. And I had continued writing for my own creative pleasure, but and I did have most of a manuscript finished, and I decided, well, what the heck? I'm just going to pay the $50 and have someone who's in the profession critique it. And it just happened to be this wonderful agent. I mean, it could have been anybody, as you know. It could have been an editor, it could have been a successful writer, it could have been an agent or a publisher, but it happened to be Anne Collette of the Reese Agency. And she read my 5 pages, and we sat down for coffee, and she said, well, these are interesting. Do you have a complete manuscript? And I said, well, yes, I do. I almost did. And she said, well, if you'd like to, send it to me. And if it's as promising as these 5 pages, we can talk about doing a representation contract. And I'm like gobsmacked. I didn't expect anything like that. And so I just sort of sat there staring at her. I said, okay. And she said, well, is it something you think you'd like to do? And I said, yeah. Yeah, I would. I mean, I was still sort of in shock at that point, but that was really the aha moment when I thought, this could really happen. So.
And then how long between delivering that first manuscript, and was that the first manuscript we talked about? Yes, and so perhaps
it wasn't bought by anybody.
But to share a little bit that it was how it evolved, that you then moved into a different venue or location.
Yes, I didn't. Anne wanted me. She liked the manuscript fine, but she said, you know what, you should really write about the film industry. She said, whenever I talk to you about the film industry, I'm always like, wow, that's so interesting. And she said, this manuscript is fine, but, and it was about a medical intuitive, which is something I'm also very interested in, is energy medicine and those people who can diagnose other people based on their energy. And I know there are a lot of frauds out there, but there are people who really can do that. And that's fascinated me for, 20, 25 years. So anyway, my protagonist was a medical intuitive. And we got a really nice pile, all very polite, of rejection letters when she submitted it to various publishers. And once we'd gone through that, Anne was very patient with me. She said, okay, you want to sell a book? Write what you know. write about Hollywood. So that's when we got to Final Cut.
And you're now writing the series.
Yes.
Starstruck is the second in the series.
Yes, Joey Jessup, the movie key costumer, is the protagonist in both books. Yes, and they are set in the film industry. Final Cut takes place in one movie, and in the second book, Joey has moved on to another movie. So they're all set within the context of film production. And what I hope to do is, I hope to take readers sort of on an insider's guided tour into the everyday working world of Hollywood. Because, we all know about the red carpets and, all the glitz and glamour, but Hollywood is filled with thousands of people who are really talented and very skilled and work hard and work together. And I wanted to show that part of the industry that, that we don't really see, because it's not anything that will sell tickets.
At this point, are you planning to continue with this series, or do you think down the road you would consider a standalone, or maybe revisit the medical intuitive?
I'd love to, but I don't know. I'm kind of, at this point, I'm very grateful for this journey, and I'm looking at it as an opportunity to both learn and become part of a new creative community, because that's one of the things I wanted most when I really decided, okay, I'm going to put all my energy into this. Because when you're working in film, and
Yes.
you have a community built in around you.
Yes.
Of coworkers and colleagues and people who are all working together toward the same goal. And there's a wonderful kind of synergy in that, and that kind of community. And it's very inspirational to be part of that community every day. And that's what I was hoping to find with the writing community. And so far, I feel, again, very grateful. I've met so many wonderful people. And I'm really happy with the decision, but I'm just looking at it as like, show me what's going to happen next, and let's just be open to where it takes me.
Being in the moment as a writer?
Well,
The
I'm really kind of a control freak in a way, because you kind of have to be if figuring out the costume design for a big movie like Forrest Gump is like a military operation in many ways, and sometimes logistics is even more important than the creative part. But so I am kind of a control freak by necessity, and I'd like to break some of those habits and try and be a little more open. So that's the goal.
So when you're writing, does that playtime, can you look at it as playtime as opposed to the structure of the hierarchy of any Hollywood production and all those beats that you have to hit and deal with all those many forces of power in the hierarchy?
I do. The writing time, yes. The rewriting and the editing,
Right.
that gets to be a little bit of a different thing. But
Yes.
yeah, but
yes.
I really do try with the writing to, just not. I mean, I'm an outliner, so I'm not like that free and carefree. But I don't like stick slavishly to the outline either, because I have learned that if a character or something that's going on in the story is telling me to go a different way, I should at least listen to that and give it a try, as opposed to like trying to, shove it down the alley that I think it should be going. So.
Your characters probably appreciate that. I bet they do. What were some of the biggest obstacles that you faced in that arc of, you had the agent who had faith in you, you found that location and venue in terms of work would be two of your characters that she's saying, yes, that is the container that I really recommend for you to use. Take all of that experience and then direct it. So was that a smooth journey? What were the little bumps in the road? And if there were any bumps in the road, I would say my writer's journey has had a lot of bumps in the road, and many of them good lessons to learn.
Right.
So we will say that. And also, were there kind of happy surprises? Well, it sounds like Anne was a happy surprise.
Oh, my goodness.
Because you certainly didn't
Yes.
anticipate that. You were taking the creative risk, first of all, of writing the book, and then, as we all know, exposing it to that first reader, and especially an agent, right? So,
Yeah, I think we all, I think any kind of creative endeavor, I mean, it takes such, we're always taking risks whenever we're doing something like that. And whenever you're willing to be open enough to risk failing, making a mistake, having to rewrite your work, having it rejected, all of those, you're going to run into, I think, myriad bumps, or at least I have. Like, nobody wanting my medical intuitive. I think the whole process, and I want to pull this back, I want to put this back to you because you're a writer and you're a celebrated television writer and you're a very accomplished writer. I feel like there are peaks and valleys almost every day. Some days are better than others. In terms of pointing to specifics, I find that it is challenging to sit alone and try to come up with words on the page. I mean, I know that's so simplistic, but I think that's kind of the biggest challenge. And then, of course, the next biggest challenge is to get somebody else to look at it. And I mean, I think the entire process is both challenging and exciting and filled with risk, filled with reward. I mean, I feel like I'm not saying anything specific or valuable, but
I think those two words are the key words: risk and reward. I don't know how anybody gets the reward creatively before you take the risk. I don't know. Maybe somebody, but that's not been my experience. First, you have to speaking for myself, give myself permission to write whatever I want to write. And I say that in terms of prose because I had my day job. I had my day job as first it was a film journalist and then a television writer producer. So that was a very important job to keep because that was where the money came in, of course. And of course, I hoped to write a book that would sell someday, but I had a steady income and I also had a family to support. So I was not going to mess with that paradigm. All of my prose writing was on the side, so to speak. It was a side hustle. And that's not to say that I didn't get a lot of support at different times from my film and television agents and managers and attorneys. And we all know it's 15 to 20% just off the top anywhere you go. So, but that was never their interest in me. It was they would accommodate, pat her on the head. They're going to accommodate my interest about being a prose writer, but keep delivering the pilots, keep delivering the pages, keep delivering our 10%. That's the agency. The 5% is for the attorney, and the other 5% is the business manager if you go that way. No, thank you. 15 was enough for me, right? so it was always playtime for me when I could do it, and it was few and far between, frankly, because it only happened when I was on hiatus from a series or a deal, right? Between deals, but still hustling the second deal because that was the day job. Daryl's agreeing with me, she knows very well. So it was, I'll just say, I was an only child, I was an only grandchild, and so I grew up being alone a lot of the time, and the toughest class for me in school was recess. You think I'm kidding. I'm not. I mean, I had no brothers and sisters. Yeah, so in that sense, playtime for me has been with the page and the pen. And as much as I do all my revisions, of course, and thank God for the laptop, right? But I still do a lot of my, well, at least partial first drafts with that pen and paper and the legal pen. It's just, I like the tactile experience of it. Still, I'm old school that way.
When you were writing Cagney and Lacey, did you do that longhand?
This is very funny. Yes, I was the only writer that did that. And then when I went on to China Beach as a writer-producer, it was all very curious to the other writer-producers that John Young, who was the executive producer, and I continued to, can you believe it, write on a legal pad with a pen, right? So, but of course I end up doing so much revising now that the revisions are constant. But always the juggling act. My writing has always been a juggling act for me, a pragmatic one, a very pragmatic one. I wanted to ask you what you wish you would have known at the beginning of that year as I'm going to say, once you had the contract, once you had the deal, which is huge, that's huge. Congratulations, Marjorie, that's huge. Once you had that though, then what next? Because you still had to show up with all of the marketing choices and decisions, and you had a whole new learning curve.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Tell us how you navigated that, please.
Well, I'm still navigating that. That is, for me, that has been even the biggest lesson, although I continue to learn every day, as I hope I will always continue to learn as any kind of creative person, but as a writer. But the marketing, oh my gosh. Even though I came from film, which, film is all about marketing, but I didn't deal with that part of it. So the marketing has been a huge learning curve that I'm still learning about. What I didn't know anything. I knew that I needed to be on social media. I didn't realize that having a newsletter was probably the best marketing tool I could have as an author starting out. And I would urge anybody to at least look at that. Because, if social media goes down, you still have your email list. And you still have people who are really interested in showing up for you. I mean, I have been very fortunate with Crooked Lane. They've been wonderful and supportive, and they do a great job of marketing. But it's a big, noisy world out there, and it just it gets noisier every day. And I think I think you have to be creative and look at what other people do. And I am still, as I said, learning about the various ways. And I think diversifying as much as you possibly can is also a good idea. Just find different communities. There are all kinds of communities online, especially cozy mysteries, but I'm sure for every genre or subgenre, there are communities of people that you can find to, because otherwise, well, for one thing, I think it's also getting more and more difficult to book venues for appearances. And then you end up, I mean, I love going out and doing book appearances, but you're sort of hand selling each book one at a time. And I think I just think you have to expand your horizons and just think outside the box a little bit. I mean, I know that's a cliche, but I think everything is changing. And I understand, certainly it is in the film industry. The film industry is in tremendous upheaval right now. And I've got to say, I understand all that stuff because I was in it for 30 years. But I think I see parallels in the publishing industry. Some of it has to do with AI. Some of it has to do with Amazon being, the big bad wolf that has completely upended the publishing industry. But I think things are in flux. And if I knew more in a granular way about the history of publishing, I could speak to it more articulately. But I do see that there are parallels in the corporate upheaval in both industries, and I think they're not unrelated. If it isn't exactly the same causes, I think, as I said, I think they're related. And it always, right? It has to do with dollars and cents. It has to do with money. So
I'm curious, we both shared how impressed we were with Gigi Panion's presentation last year. Thank you, Terry. Yeah, last month. And how much we learned from it. And how she crafted her career to different distribution systems. And I'm curious if have there been other authors who were good role models for you in terms of, creative content possibly as well, but we're talking about marketing right now, and you saw how they marketed or hand sold their books. Were they kind of guiding lights for you to say, this is how it's done?
There are several authors that I look to. Kathleen Donnelly, who writes the National Forest Canine Service series, and she has a background in journalism. And I have found her to be a wonderful, generous source of information. And also, she is very successful at marketing her books. And
what are her secrets? Tell us all. I'll share the secret.
She's the one who finally convinced me to do the newsletter. She said, that's the most important thing you can do.
Oh, great. Gigi does it too. Gigi mentioned she found her newsletter.
Oh, that's right. I thought Gigi was wonderful, and I couldn't hope to bring the kind of value that she did to this forum or discussion, because I just thought I thought she had such a wealth of experience and so many great ideas. But I noticed that she said, I gave up on social media. I just do my newsletter now. I haven't given up on social media. But I do, I think, recognize the importance of the newsletter. And it also gives you a way to, social media has gotten awfully noisy too, and it seems like it's mostly, ads, and it's not so personal anymore. And I think the newsletter gives you a chance to actually authentically, as authentic as you're able to be. Like if you're willing to, and I'm happy to just let people know who I am. And fall on my face if that's what happens. But I think if you just are going to be yourself and reach out to people, I think there are people who are going to be receptive to that, especially if they like your books. And if they don't, then they're not your readers, and that's okay too.
So for the time being, you're going to continue investing in social media. I think you said you posted several times a week.
I do. I post 3 times a week, and I try and do one promotional post of some kind, whether it be like the schedule for my book tour, or something that's happened, like when Deadly Pleasures said that Final Cut was chosen as one of the best cozy mysteries of 2023. I did a post about that. I do a personal post that can be just anything that I'm thinking about or something that's happened or maybe a picture of my cats or, and then, I do a Hollywood fun fact post every Friday. That's just,
Yeah.
something about the film industry that's either happened to me or I've noticed or happened to a friend or,
But that's part of your brand.
yeah,
I hate
guess
to use that
that's-
word, but it is part of your
Yeah.
brand. You can speak from that
Yes,
focus,
yeah.
that POV.
Yeah, yes,
Yes.
yes, that's true, that's true.
So-
And, and they're just for fun. Like this week, I think I did snake traps for, what, let me think about what life-saving article of clothing did we mass produce in our costume workroom for Forrest Gump? And the answer is snake traps. Because when we were down in South Carolina shooting the Vietnam sequences, we found out that the whole countryside was infested with copperheads. And so, fortunately, we had a huge costume workroom and we hired more seamstresses from the local pool. And we just turned out hundreds of pairs of snake traps for the cast and crew because you can't go out in the swamp and expect not to get bitten. So, so it's something like that.
The mother of invention, necessity. Yes. And so I just wanted to quickly check, how much time do we have? I want to leave plenty of time for Q&A. Do we have, how much time for Q&A, Nance?
About 10 minutes.
Okay.
What time is it right now?
Yeah, I have 3:25. Okay. What I'd like to do, I'm going to ask one Q, and then I want to open up to all of the other Qs, and Marjorie will answer with the A's. Marjorie has so many wonderful stories about Hollywood, and she's incorporated a number of those anecdotes and character composites, I know, in Final Cut, because I've read it, she shared a few. So this is my question, and then we'll open up to everybody else. My last question for the moment. Please give us examples of the good, the bad, and the ugly of your experience working in Hollywood and how you redirected some of those facts into fiction.
Okay, I'll start with the good.
Yay, that's Marjorie. Yeah.
One of the best compliments I ever got in my costuming career was the day after we did Dustin Hoffman's first costume fitting for Wag the Dog. The costume designer and I walked into our office and there were 24 white roses on each of our desks with a note from Dustin that said, "You found my character for me." I mean, and for a costume design, because that's the storytelling piece of costume design. That's what makes it different from fashion design, because you're using clothing to help tell a story, to help build a character, to help support the environment in the story. So to have that from Dustin Hoffman and he's such a wonderful man as well as a brilliant actor. The bad. Well,
This is tough, I know.
I did put this in Final Cut. One day, and I sort of just, wasn't even making it up. I just sort of typed it. It's the truth. We were down at the Santa Monica Pier shooting a beach scene. And we had all the background, beautiful men and women dressed in beach appropriate attire. We were getting ready to shoot and the director starts screaming, "These women aren't hot enough. I want you to get Victoria's Secret models in here right now and read." And so like in front of all these lovely people, this was Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving.
Oh my.
So I didn't put that in the book because that was like, just too unbelievable. So we didn't get Victoria's Secret models, but he did. He nixed all the women. He got the casting department to, send whatever they could find in terms of models that were available the day before Thanksgiving down to the beach, and we redressed them. So that was bad. And it was ugly.
It was also ugly, yes. And I know that a couple of the characters in Final Cut are composites of both the good, but also the bad and the ugly, including the
Right.
maniac director.
Absolutely. And the funny thing about that is after the book came out, a lot of my colleagues who read the book and they called me up and they said, "Oh, I know who Marcus Prey is." It's like, and I got like 6 of those calls or texts and none of them got the real guy. I mean, he's based on a real
interesting.
guy, but
That's
and-
interesting.
but we got all these different names and I'm like, "Oh, no, it's not, but it could be."
It could-
Every time, "Oh, no, it's not, but it could be."
It sounds like that was a direct reference as opposed to a composite. Or maybe it was a
No,
composite of all of those that could be.
Well, now it is.
Now it is.
No, it's based pretty directly on this guy because he's one of the worst I ever ran into.
Oh, wow. Well, we'll talk later about that. I'm curious. His surname is Prey, P-R-A-Y, and I remember reading the book. So is that an encode for P-R-E-Y? Because he's constantly looking for prey to prey upon. Anyway, you'll tell me about that later, too. So please, let's open it up to Q&A. Yes. Oh, Q&A to the mic, please, here. Well, the cue will come to the mic, and the answer is coming from this mic. All right, please, let's bring some questions up for...
But I just wanted to make a comment toward you. What you were saying about the trials of writers and the risk-taking and the loneliness of sitting there. I've had that on my mind so much that like, tears were coming to my eyes.
Aw.
Saying that. I think for everybody in this room that's true. Thank you for expressing that so well, and I'd like to friend you on Facebook anyway.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind. Of course.
Thank you, Lynn. Please come on down, or come on up. Bring your questions. Yes.
I guess coming from a visual field where like everything is something that you see and you can tell by like showing it to people, how do you like kind of merge that into like like writing where it's something that you have to like write down and kind of just like express it through words? Because I'm a very visual person and I'll see a scene and I'll write it down and I'm like, man, I want to write all the details. I want people to see that the jacket is red and like I'll describe it and it's like, well, that's not the point of writing sometimes. So how have you like managed to kind of merge those two elements?
You know, I think probably sometimes more effectively than others, but I think that's good to have your writing be vivid and visual. And then, you know, I think write it all down and then, you know, go back and edit. I mean, writing is all about, well, you're the expert.
You're the writer, too.
Writing is all about rewriting, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
I mean, get it down, get it all down, and then pare it back, and leave in them what seems to really resonate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, or like for you personally, was your experience hard wanting to kind of also express yourself, like going from like a visual element?
You know, that's interesting because I do. When I'm writing, I sort of use my outline like a shot list for camera setups in a movie. And the whole time I'm writing the book, I really do have it playing in my head. I really do see it if I can't see it in my mind, I can't put it on the page.
To save trips to the mic, I have 2 questions, if I may.
2 for 1, it's fine.
My first one is, so I really thought that the book built up to a very thrilling end. And so my first question was about how many times did you really have to work on making it as thrilling as possible? I mean, I know that it probably took some time to rewrite to a point where you felt like it was in the right place as far as the thrill factor. And so I would like you to talk about that. And my second question is just a sort of a creative decision question. You started with a prologue, and that's a creative decision. I was just wondering your thoughts about why you decided to go with a prologue in this particular book. So thank you.
That's both good questions.
Yeah.
Yes, actually, the biggest challenge for me with the end was I knew what I wanted the end to be, which is, well, I shouldn't, actually, probably shouldn't. Yeah. Sorry. But it involved an institution that I have been a customer and really a sort of a family member of, professional institution, a costume house. And I needed to get their permission before I wrote the end because of what happens.
Oh, I see.
And so
Okay.
actually, at that point, once they said, oh, no, go ahead. I was like, oh, okay, well, so I wrote it actually very quickly, and then you're right, I did need to go back and refine it. And so I would say I did a half dozen passes at it after I got it down. But the hard part was like just making the decision to do it. And in terms of, I'm sorry, what was the second question? Oh, prologue. Yeah. I thought a lot about that. I felt like I needed to build the world for people because it is a world that most of us are not that familiar with. And I thought I needed, I'm just being totally honest here, I thought I needed something to draw the reader into the story before I started to introduce them to the world. I don't know, that was my thought process behind it.
Did you get support from your editors on that?
I did, actually.
Okay, good, because I know sometimes there's a mixed response to whether there should be a prologue or not.
Right.
Or should it just be chapter one? I know there are mixed opinions on that, so that's great you got support on it.
I have two of the greatest editors who've been really, really supportive. And they'll tell me when they think I've gone off the reservation. They were both very supportive about that.
Are you talking about they tell you about that in advance and also on track changes? I mean, down to every single
Oh, wow, yeah.
track changes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Stamina.
Yeah, when you get those emails, you just have to take a deep breath, read it through, go away for a while, and then come back and just, just eat the elephant one bite at a time.
I was just curious because you did talk about the first manuscript that was rejected and then the new one, but you didn't talk about any correlation between them. Did you start from scratch on the new one? Did you cannibalize stuff from the other? Do you have things that you can use in a future story?
Maybe.
Good question.
I haven't thought about that specifically, but I suppose possibly, but that's not kind of my first thought about it. I wouldn't reject that out of hand, but
How many drafts did you do on that first novel as opposed to Final Cut? I'm curious about that because you were doing your own drafts.
right.
You were doing your own drafts. So an editor had not given you notes on that. You may have had
Right.
beta readers as well as your agent. No, you were relying strictly on your agent. Yes, okay. Well, it's great
Oh,
you
and
had-
she's a great editor, but before she got hold of it, I hadn't shown it to anybody. I did 3 complete drafts of it before Anne read those 5 pages.
Well, that's impressive. It is. I mean, I have to say, you kind of dismissed it. Well, that one didn't sell. You completed a novel. You completed
No.
a novel. And it attracted an agent who wanted to work with you.
No,
So all
believe
these
me.
little victories, let's add them up, shall we?
No,
Writers?
that's absolutely, we really should celebrate each of those victories.
Yeah.
We should celebrate ourselves.
Hear, hear. Every draft, every polish. Other questions, please? Yes, Daryl.
Okay, I'm Daryl. Everybody knows me. why don't you make your first book into a novelette or a short story? Because you love the characters so much.
I did.
And maybe she has some beats that might go with her career.
That's a great idea. Hadn't thought of it, but thank you. Great suggestion.
Might even be a candidate for an anthology somewhere.
You never know where. Right. So thank you for my next idea.
That's great.
Hi, I'm Eleanor Kaywood Jones. I'm visiting the chapter from the Chesapeake chapter in DC.
Oh, welcome.
Maybe
Oh,
it's one box, so I should why not?
Chesapeake, University of Virginia.
There you go.
There we
Yeah, all
go.
the way back over.
Yeah. I have so many good friends in DC.
Great.
This is great, though. Just a couple comments and then a question. I cannot wait to get out of here and Google snake chaps. I can't wait. I'm staying off my phone here, and I'll be outside the door Googling that. And also, maybe it's because I'm not living here, but the idea of costumes as storytelling is like this novel new thought to me, and something just kind of clicked. I think I'll be paying a lot more attention as I've been replaying Forrest Gump that I've seen 18,000 times in my head while you were speaking. That's just a really nice new thought for this East Coast girl.
Oh, aren't you kind?
And the other thing is the bane of my existence, outlines. Are you a natural outliner? Did you take a course? Did it just come to you? I'm just curious as to how you approach outlining because it's extremely painful for me. So thank you.
Thank you. It's just the way my brain works. It really is. It's a natural thing. I could probably benefit from a course, but I've never taken one.
Were you a natural outliner before you had to do shot lists for your costume work? I'm curious
I think
about
I've
that.
been an outliner since college, quite frankly. It always helped me study. And if I had a paper to write for, something that was, that required more creative writing or, an essay sort of thing, it just helps to organize your thoughts.
Absolutely.
My book launch is going to be May 7th at Book Soup, and I would love it if any of you wanted to come. You don't have to buy a book, just come on by. We're going to have a party. It'll be great to see you. And please do take a book.
Thank you, Marjorie. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much. Thank you.